The thing about annoyance is that once there's a spark, you can find more things to stoke it. Natalie Sue, I hope this finds you well. This is AMI Audiobook Review. I'm your host, Jacob Szymanski. I Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie Sue is a contemporary romantic comedy-ish novel with a touch of my favorite subgenre of horror, corporate horror. The real draw to this thing, though, is that it lampoons the hell out of Western office culture and makes you weirdly invested in the stupidest office drama. It follows Jolene, who's a pretty complex character, after she is accidentally given access to the email inboxes of every single employee at her company. And this is a great setup for a book, but does it execute on its promise? Well, we have Amr Khan and Sharon Johnston to help us make that determination. How's it going, guys?
Good.
It's going well.
All right. How do we want to do this? Opening remarks by each of us. You know what? I'm the host. I'm making that decision. That's how we're going to do it. Amr, you go first since you're the one who recommended it.
So I came across this book in a book list from National Public Radio from their own sort of staff picks. There's like 300 picks, so I sort of looked at it in terms of glanced at quite a few titles, and then this title obviously caught me. I Hope This Finds You Well, so I wanted to see what it was about. And it's sort of a rom-com, but it's a humorous look at a lot of serious topics too, which I think is really popular these days. And I wanted to take a look at the premise is so much fun in terms of being
Great
in an office
premise. Really
being in
good
an
book.
office environment, and then being able to see everybody's direct messages as well as instant messages as well as their emails. You have this semi-hostile or totally hostile, depending on how you look at it, office environment that's very similar to The Office, if you're into that show, or Office Space, which was a movie some time ago. But you have this sort of dry humor of sort of getting on each other's nerves, but trying not to get on each other's nerves at the same time. The book is hilarious. I mean, I think that's undeniable from anybody that has actually read it and that I've spoken to, that they do find this very funny. And I think the undertones are quite serious, which jive with a lot of and mesh with a lot of other themes, which I like.
Which I think that's one of the beautiful things of corporate horror as a subgenre, where it's like, it's funny because it's making fun of that office culture, but there's also some really dark undertones of how it feels like a capitalist dystopia where everyone is just kind of held prison in a place that, sustains their living by giving them a paycheck, but at the same time, making them miserable and making them exist in a place that feels surreal, working in a cubicle under fluorescent lights, under gray carpet, and
hiding from your
basically
workers.
like living together, hiding from your coworkers, and getting mad at the person who's reheating fish in the microwave. Yes,
communal microwave, we should say.
Yeah. Sharon,
Yes.
opening thoughts for you. What are your thoughts?
Very similar to Amir. I heard of the book. Amir had recommended it to me. Before that, I hadn't heard of it, but I'm glad that he did, because I really enjoyed it. Again, just that the office politics and the funny things that happen, the water cooler gossip, as they say, just the day-to-day lives of your colleagues. And what I thought was really important was highlighting the fact that a lot of times we see these people every day. They're practically our second family. And a lot of
Yes.
times we don't understand what's happening outside of the work. We only judge them, their personalities, the way that they act, what they do, based upon what we see at work. And we sometimes forget that these people have lives outside of work. And sometimes what happens in their life outside of work really affects their mood, their attitude, the way that, they come across. So I think that was something that the book really highlighted for me.
Yeah, I think that's the heart of the book, right? It's getting to understand that these people that you work around, they're not just caricatures.
Right.
They're fully fledged people. And like that quote I read at the top of the show kind of points out, that sometimes like you just get so irritated. And then as soon as you tell yourself that you're irritated by someone, every little thing they do annoys you. And it kind of builds up, and you end up having these really shallow perceptions of the people that work around you. And this book, because she ends up, Jolene, the main character, when she ends up getting access to everybody's email inboxes and DMs, she gets a much bigger picture of their lives and what they're really like and what they're up to, and a real picture of, the political machinations, that office politics and the petty office drama, that it's not just funny and entertaining because, I mean, it's fun to get an idea of what gossip is happening in an office, but it's also pretty deep in that you understand these characters much better.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in with two questions I think were explored really well in this novel. A lot of us, when we're working, and Jolene has this issue a lot too, in terms of why am I here, and then how the other question is, how much do I get involved with my coworkers' lives? I mean, from the start of the book, you realize that Jolene's not very interested or invested in working for this sort of heartless, soulless company, and at the same time she's not really interested in her coworkers at all. But I think the novel does a great job of exploring, like you were saying earlier, Jacob, that these are not just caricatures sitting in cubicles, but they're actually human beings with real problems. I mean, the book is funny and hilarious in terms of the office politics and pieces, but the book also does a great job of actually forming the characters and their real issues, and with their real lives and their families and all the other things that are going on in their lives, not just Jolene's, which is the main character.
And Jolene herself, at least in the first like 3/4 of the book, definitely sees her coworkers as caricatures. She does not see the deeper parts of them, and she's kind of judgmental, but I'll get to that a little later. Sharon, I want to know your thoughts on just like a plot of the story, because we really haven't touched on that yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the plot, it's it's an interesting one because it's got so much happening at one
Yeah,
time.
there's a lot
Um,
going on.
there's a lot, yeah, and I think like Amir was saying, here's this one employee not very interested in anybody else's problems or what's happening. For her, it's just this job she comes to every day. I even just her job title. She's kind of competing with Kate, and there's a lot going on. And then all of a sudden, she's got access to what everybody's talking about, and especially when it comes to her and what they're saying about her and how they really feel. Because obviously the way that they speak to her and the way that they show her. They act like as if they like her, and she's just someone who's really quiet. Where meanwhile, in the office, there's all of this talk about her between colleagues, and all of a sudden now she's got uh, access to see everything that's happening. So I find the plot very interesting. And then on the other hand, there's this new person in HR that she's seeming to like, and there just seems to be a lot going on, right? It's just a lot in this workplace environment of all different things happening. So I don't know. I find the plot is a little bit, at times, can be a little confusing. What is the plot of the book? What's happening? But I don't know. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. So
Okay, so you do touch on Cliff, the male love interest, who's in HR, the new HR guy,
yeah,
and that's on top of everything else that's going on. She's
yes,
competing for a new job. She's trying to keep her mom happy because of
yes.
this whole like fake marriage arrangement thing going on, and she's also managing this love interest like all at the same time, and handling this like kid that lives back at her apartment. There's almost too much going on, in my opinion. Oh, and
Right.
also she also has that backstory of what happened back in high school, and like the
Yes.
Basically, yeah,
reputation
what's
that left on her.
And that's a big thing, I think, and that drives a lot of how her personality and how she's acting at work, and the things that, not trusting people, and not wanting to get too close to anybody as well.
Yeah, I mean, the book does a great job of exploring pain without sort of dragging the reader down into the dumps kind of deal.
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
you see that she's able to see other people's pain, and she has that sort of character arc throughout the book in terms of, it sort of starts off with her just hating everybody, but then she's able to see other people's pain, and she may not know exactly what to do with it. and then that's sort of one of the themes of the book. But she's able to see it and empathize with people that they're also in pain as much as she is.
Well, that's where the character development comes in for Jolene, because yes, she does see the pain and the struggles in other people, and she empathizes. But guys, it took a long time for Jolene to get there.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
I thought
Yes.
a frustration I had with this book was that Jolene's inner monologue in her observations of the office and the people around her, while yes, they were funny, they were also pretty mean spirited. She was making fun of
Yeah.
everyone around her, like how much the people sweat, how their lunches look gross. It just went on and on and on to the point where, like, yes, I'm laughing, but I'm also like, wow, Jolene's kind of a jerk.
Absolutely, and I think in
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
in the back of the mind for readers, it's okay. Well, what caused this issue, and that's where the sort of the backstory comes in.
Yes.
Because like from her observations and stuff, you have this niggling feeling like this is not really her. Something is going on where she's always like this, and why she wound up so tight, right?
Absolutely.
And then
Absolutely. And I feel like there's negativity coming out, and you're not really
Yeah.
sure where it's coming from because she seems like a very nice person, a very good-hearted person, but then there's that negativity and you don't know where that's coming from.
yep, and then you meet her family, and then you're like, maybe that's
Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about her family. Amr, what did you think of that whole plot? If you
So-
want to like talk about it a bit.
yeah. So I mean, the main character Jolene is a second generation Iranian Canadian. The author herself is actually second generation Persian Canadian as well. So this is something that is part of what I liked about this book. I mean, you get a glimpse into the culture of people who are Persian or Iranian. The book chapters are also titled in certain ways, which lend itself to cultural pieces. But I mean, this book is not a cultural introduction to to Persian culture, but you get a good taste of it in terms of when you meet her family and what her family goals are and how dedicated her family is to her, but also of the monumental expectations that they have for her. Just the scenes where Jolene is sitting at the table with her mom's friends and what their expectations are, and
Oh my God, infuriating! I got
infuriating,
so mad.
unashamedly trying to set
The
her up.
aunties, Amir.
The aunties, and they're trying to set her up, and she's all she's already she's not a teenager where she needs help getting a date, but and
Not
all
just
adds-
getting a date, getting married.
Getting
getting
married,
married, and
yes.
it all adds to the complexity of the plot too, right? In terms of the rom-com aspect of this book, because on one hand you have this fake marriage thing she's helping somebody else out with. On the other hand, she has feelings for this HR guy who's like literally the enemy in terms of corporate politics that she shouldn't be getting close to. And then on the third hand, she's got her mother after her for that. So it's a lot going on, and I think this book has an underlying sort of tone of anxiety and how life can sort of come at you hard, even when you're sort of down. And again, without putting the reader into the dumps, and you can still laugh and you can still sort of enjoy the ride, which I really like. I mean, it takes a skilled author to do that. And this is her debut novel, which I found amazing. I just found that out today, actually, and I was like, wow, it's quite a debut novel.
Sharon, do you agree with Amr that the whole like mental health representation was done tastefully, especially considering that it's being blended with so much comedy?
Yeah, I did think that the author did a great job of, getting a little bit of diving into her culture and her background, but not sort of having it overtake the book. And I really enjoyed. I mean, some of those things even remind me, although I'm not Persian. I really it reminded me a lot of my culture and some of my families, and that whole saying where it takes a village. To raise a child. If you've noticed, her mom would include friends and relatives and aunties and cousins, and everybody knew what Jolene was doing. And even when you had to make your daughter, there was one part in the book where she had to make her daughter seem, that she was in a higher job and that she was getting a promotion because all the other aunties' kids were becoming doctors or had very high rated jobs. So
Oh
Jolene,
my God.
even she had to be getting a promotion, having this high rated job to make her look good. And it was quite funny. It kind of reminded me a little bit of my culture and my family, and where everybody is involved, right? So I thought it was great. I thought the way that she did it
I
was fantastic.
Okay, so that whole aspect of her family and everybody getting involved, where Jolene's business was everybody in her family's business, with absolutely no barriers. I thought it was almost like overdone, like a caricature. But now that you're
No.
saying it this way,
No,
it's
no,
not.
not
That's
at
what I'm
all.
asking.
No.
It's
We can
not a
both attest to
caricature.
that. It's a very typical sort of second generation immigrant story,
Yes.
not necessarily from her,
Yes.
but from almost anywhere in South
Yes.
Asia. So it's not something sort of
Oh my god.
pegged to one culture. I mean, I think there's numerous
No.
books that I've read which delve into this, and obviously Sharon and I both have had personal experience with this kind of stuff. So
I like how both of
Yeah.
you just went, no, it's not a caricature. Trust me.
it's not overblown at all. We've seen worse. We've both seen worse.
Yeah.
Just ridiculous.
Again, it goes back to the, it takes a village to raise a child. And that's a lot of our culture in the South Asian community is very much that way. So,
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I did want to touch on the narration here by Nassim Pedra. So good, eh? One of the best narrations I've heard in months, honestly. I'd never heard of this person before, but she absolutely killed it.
I agree.
yes, I
think
agree
that's
too.
one of the enjoyable parts of this book is also the narration. I mean, there was no point where I was like cringing or was trying to shy away from narration. I mean, it very much brought you into the story and kept you there.
Yes.
Something I found really funny, and Nassim Pedra did a really good job at like bringing you into it, was there was a lot of, it seems like a bit of an extreme term, but like misery porn in this, where it's because Jolene has a lot of self-loathing and anxiety. She kind of describes herself seeming like, I don't know, not exactly the most glamorous thing, but the way that the author describes what she does when she's alone at home, like watching The Bachelor on TV while doom scrolling Instagram and like stalking people she used to go to high school with,
Yeah.
and like ordering Uber Eats and stuff. I'm like, that's the type of thing people never talk about, but it's so true.
That's
Like
a good
when
point.
we're alone and we have nobody accountable to be accountable to, that's exactly the type of thing we do.
Yes.
Basically
Yes.
spiraling out of control, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
that that Bachelor lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It
I think
al-
it lends itself to Natalie Sue's own thing. I read a little thing about her biography, and in her hobbies, she says she likes to watch good and bad Netflix and TV. So I thought that was very honest. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
She describes Jolene watching like cruise ship documentaries to fall asleep to. I'm like, this is so true. I do that as well. Not cruise ship documentaries. Actually, no. I think I actually have once before. But like listening to YouTube videos to fall asleep. But I wouldn't listen to this audiobook to fall asleep because it's pretty engaging. And one of the engaging elements I thought was Cliff, the love interest in HR, otherwise known as corporate police. He was interesting to me because he wasn't a typical male love interest, because they didn't overly describe his looks. He wasn't like tall and handsome and muscular with a square jaw. Like they didn't really describe him all that much. He was just a really emotionally intelligent person who was overwhelmingly himself in a way that Jolene found very attractive. And I thought that was super refreshing. He loved Warhammer.
Yes.
Yeah. So you might want to tell us what that is, because I don't know.
Warhammer is Christianity for nerds. It's it's a whole universe that has lots of tabletop games and video games and books attached to it. It's but it's mostly known for being a very complex tabletop game. Think like Dungeons and Dragons.
Dragons, yeah. Because even Jolene's sort of mystified as what this is, and
Right.
I was as well. I have an issue with his taste in donuts, Mr. Cliff, but just saying, I don't know. He's got a good heart in terms of bringing donuts, but I'm like, really? I don't know.
What, rainbow sprinkles didn't do it for you, Almir?
No, I can't even remember the first donut he brought Jolene. I'm like, that's a weird donut, then. No, and to your point, Jacob, I think that's another thing that stands out in this book is that it is sort of a rom-com, but it sort of isn't, because there isn't sort of those cheesy sort of stereotypical descriptions of people who are, tall, dark, and handsome, or long-legged, or whatever throughout this, whether it's Jolene or Cliff or anybody else. A lot of this book is talking about people's characters and basically
Yes,
what
there's
they're going
very few
through.
physical descriptions now that I'm thinking
Yes.
about it. Almost none.
No.
Yeah, yeah,
There was one point in the book where Jolene did talk about like his something to do with his arms being kind of muscular, but it was very subtle. Like it was just part of her describing him, and it wasn't, she talked about him being a good looking guy, being tall, but I think
yeah.
there was one part, and if you weren't listening carefully, it would just pass by you. It wasn't the main
Yes.
focus of it, which I liked.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's almost like she chose to objectify other things rather than people.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like, let's
if you,
focus on something else here.
even his office, right? Like they focused a lot
Yeah,
about what was in his office, all the
yeah,
the posters on the wall and the different
Mm.
memorabilias he had. And I remember a couple of talks about Star Trek and Star Wars and things like that, but there wasn't really a lot about him per se.
yeah.
Yeah, and she remarks that she finds it. What did she say exactly? She said that she just finds it quite shocking and like amazing that he's that open about being himself at the office in a place that seems to strip
Right.
everybody's individuality. In that way, he really stands out more than just a love interest, but just like as a person in the office. Now,
Yes.
before we wrap up this review, I want to make sure that we all get the opportunity to say what we want to say about this book. Sharon, can I throw it back to you just to make sure that you get the chance to say what you want to say? Like, what do the people need to know?
I think when it comes to a book like this, again, I really enjoyed it. I think it's a book that keeps you reading. It's not one to fall asleep to. It's quite intense. I feel like if you miss a beat, you're missing a whole new part of the book. It
Yeah.
dives into so many different areas, of the workplace life, of her personal life. But I think what's important to keep in mind is that it does remind you that these coworkers, these people that you see every day, this quote second family, they really do have a life
Ugh.
outside of work, and they are sometimes very different outside of work than they are inside of work. And I think it's important to remember that when don't ever judge a book by its cover, right? Like unless you know them, it's it really dives into that. For me, that's the takeaway I got from it. But also, just that everyday office politics, it happens everywhere. It's not just your work or where you are. It's kind of one of those things that just happens in all different work environments.
Yeah, you have to know how to navigate it, especially when it's in person. It's a little different when you're working remotely.
True. Absolutely.
Amr?
Like I said, this book touches on a lot of things. I think if you're in a vulnerable place emotionally, this book is not for you. I mean, you need to be a little bit on solid ground to understand this book.
This
and
book
really
made me anxious.
yeah. If you're vulnerable, it might push you over the edge a little bit in either direction, or just make you want to put it down. So, yeah, I mean, you want to be in an emotionally good place when you pick this up. But I mean, the more you look at this book and the more you think about this book, the more layers you uncover. And I think that's always a good sign of a great book. I mean, you have generational pieces, which we haven't even touched on, right? I mean, people in her office are a lot older than her, a lot younger than her. She has, Miley, that, whatever, 14-year-old kid hanging around her building. So you see issues of, that affect older people, younger people, and then, somewhere in between in the form of Jolene and all the things that she has to deal with in terms of sort of getting her life set up. Her parents in terms of moving her around because of the things that happened in her past. And her just struggling with just trying to keep life going for herself, right? I mean, I think that's something that sometimes a lot of us have trouble with. And I think it's a great book in terms of feeling like you're not alone in the struggles of life. I mean, I think this is an extreme case for her where, she's just drinking when she's not at work and she's not able to really do anything else. But then all these problems presented, to her, and she's got to deal with them.
So, Amr, I'm hearing that you seem to be pretty positive about this book generally. Like it
I do,
achieved
yeah.
what it's trying to do, and that like it had a point to
Yeah.
say, and it made it well. No objections to that statement.
No, I think it's an unambiguous type of book. I mean, I think the author had
Yeah.
something in mind and she executed it very well. She wanted to write a funny book about some serious topics. and touch on a bunch of other things. And I think she did it all very, very
Mhm.
well. I mean, it's a very satisfying read, is the way I would put it. At the
Mhm.
end, I wasn't like, oh, that was, cheesy, or that's unrealistic, or, I basically had almost no complaints at the end of this book, which is pretty rare for me and pretty analytical. But it was a very enjoyable read for me. I think it's very satisfying for those that like this type of genre.
What about you, Sharon? Any final thoughts? Like I don't think you've said anything negative about it.
No, I think I actually really, like I said, I think I really enjoyed it. I think that there was a few things that I could relate to Jolene on. So especially when it comes to family dynamics. And the one thing I wanted to say though, I really liked how, in a way, she pulled it all together. The author did a great job of doing that, because I think Jolene found that in every one of her colleagues, even in the little girl, and sorry, I forget her name, the 14-year-old,
Miley.
Miley, thank you, that she saw a little bit of herself in each one of those characters, and I thought that was really neat. She found a way to relate to all of them, no matter the ones that were older or younger, or in a different frame of mind. She still found a way of relating to each of them, and understanding sort of a way of why they are who they are. And I thought that was really neat. It was a good way of pulling the book all together. But I enjoyed it. Otherwise, I would say it was, like Amir said, a very satisfying read. I think that's a good word for it.
It was fun too. I'll throw that word in there as well. I know Ramya Amuthan, the co-host on the show, she's not here today, but she also said that this book was just super funny, like 9 out of 10 comedy,
Yes.
just unbelievable. It did make me laugh at many times. I laughed out loud at the line, "I know what kind of life I'm supposed to live. I have Pinterest."
Yeah.
But it's not just that too. It's just she has so many clever observations about people that are
Yes.
kind of smarmy in kind of a jerky way, but they make me laugh and I feel bad about it.
And you have like these serious and non-serious moments at the same time. I mean, two that stuck out for me is, towards the end when, basically she's got her job on the line and she can't get any words out. It's just, stage fright basically times 1,000. And it's a very serious thing.
But she screws up a lot.
And
She
then-
screws up a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
see like non-serious parts of the book too, where where she finds that picture of her and Armin where he's pretending that they're engaged, and you're just like, and you can't do anything but laugh because it's number one, a terrible picture, and number two, he's using it as an engagement photo, and you're just like, wow, this is just crazy.
There was one part in the book as well that actually I laughed out loud, which is when he sent her the picture that she was supposed to send to her family of him in a suit. And there was a couple of things that she mentioned of him in that suit and that he didn't look good. And apparently she made a sound and he kind of looked over and saw, and he's like, then he messages her and says, "Oh, is it because of the picture?" And she was like, "Well, yeah, but it's fine. I'll just send it. You're in a suit." So
Yeah, and she's not the only one that's funny in the book. I mean, Armin sends that text that, "Oh yeah, you take everybody's coffee cups and put them in the toilet just to test." And you're sitting there horrified, and you're like, "Oh, he's joking." Oh,
right.
jeez.
No, there was some really good parts, and I laughed. There's definitely, it's a good book when I'm laughing out loud. Like, it was great. I enjoyed a lot of it. So
Yeah,
I think I'm a little more critical about this book than you two are, but it's not a bad book by any means. Like, I'm giving it a solid 7 out of 10. I'm only docking it
Okay.
points because I personally thought the ending, especially for how she resolved her issues with her mom and her family, just seemed to resolve like that. I didn't find it convincing considering how extreme her mom and her family were leading up to the conclusion. I was shocked that her mom just like had a change of heart like that. And like there's reasons why she would have a change of heart, but like I just didn't believe it. I was like, no way somebody changes that fast.
Yeah.
This woman is unbelievably stubborn. That said, that small issue does not pull away from everything else that this book did well. If you're a fan of The Office, you're going to love this book. Seriously.
yes,
I want to thank you both for coming on for this review. Amr, thank you so much for the recommendation. And Sharon Johnston, thank you so much for coming on. Always appreciate your thoughts.
Always a pleasure.
absolutely. Thank you. Always a pleasure.
That was our review of I Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie Sue. I'm Jacob Shamansky. That's all the time we have for today's AMI Audio Book Review. We're on YouTube, we're on where we listen to podcasts, and we air on AMI Audio Saturdays and Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern, and on weekends it repeats every 6 hours. Have a good one.